Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former Super Bowl winning NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas. He is also the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network, and he is also the victim of having to study the New York Giants offense this week. The football team as a whole. We'll get to the defense today and take a look at the offense on our final show for this week. But, Brian, before we dive into some of these storylines surrounding the Cowboys this week, how's it going?
It's going well, Bobby. Thank you very much. You're right. But I've kind of learned in the NFL, don't take anybody lightly even though this team has problems scoring, and lately they've had problems giving up points. So that's what we do. We sign up for the whole dinner, and
exactly.
We'll talk about the whole dinner today a little bit.
Yeah, this isn't a buffet. You don't get to pick and choose. You got to study it all.
And you know me, I love a buffet. I'm all about the buffet.
We all do. We all do, Brian. All right, so let's start off with some of these headlines impacting the Cowboys this week before we get to the Giants defense. We'll lead off here first with Martavis Bryant. I know we referenced it a little bit on the show earlier this week. He is joining the Cowboys for the rest of the season. And somebody who, this is, as we mentioned the other day, he's not even in all likelihood at the same spot Josh Gordon was at when Josh Gordon returned to the field. And Josh Gordon had been away for a long time. Martavis Bryant has never been the player that Josh Gordon was. So it's good to probably temper expectations, have reasonable ones for what this could be. But Brian, what is your thought or expectation about what Martavis Bryant can potentially do here and why the Cowboys made this move? Is this indicative of anything they think about the receiving core, or is it just hey, we're buying a lotto ticket here? Yeah,
I was told not to read anything to as far as what they think about the receivers. I think the lotto ticket is the best explanation. They're kicking the tires on a player that has some size, 6'4", 215 pounds. If he could still run like he once ran when he played, there could be opportunities there. They're going to try and get him in shape. I saw him working on the field yesterday, I believe, with Britt Brown. I think that was him that was working. It looked very much like either him or Curse, that tall, long.
Those are the only two, yeah. Where if you see a tall
long body
guy, that's
I couldn't really tell from walking into the Star, but it looked like that Britt Brown was on the field working with him and trying to get him acclimated to getting back into football shape, which he talked about. But here's a guy that at one time had speed. He's got size. This is a kick the tire situation. Now the way that what COVID football brought us was expanded practice squads and veteran expanded practice squad players. It used to be a time where if you had so many years in the league, so many games played, you could not put a veteran player on a practice squad. And now with the way the rules have changed, the addition of more practice squad spaces, you could do stuff like this. You could kick the tires.
Changed for the better, by the way. That was
I think it absolutely changed for the better. So, and you look at the situation, too, where the Cowboys have had some issues with red zone, tight red zone. Is this a taller body down in those situations? Again, kick the tires for 3 weeks. Watch him practice. Watch him get in shape. You can elevate these guys 3 different times. Maybe you kind of got lightning in a bottle here on this one.
Yeah, and look, he's somebody who incredibly talented, has not played since 2018.
He's played like XFL and
not NFL football.
Not
obviously.
NFL football, yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, you're talking about a guy who the last time he played, I believe, was for the Raiders 3 weeks after they traded Amari Cooper to the Dallas Cowboys. So that's the reference for how long ago we're talking about Martavis Bryant last playing in the NFL. But a guy with a lot of ability. Has never been able to stay out of trouble. That's been a big issue for him. Nick Eatman from DallasCowboys.com had mentioned with us on 105 Through the Fan in the Morning Show on Wednesday when we were asking him about it, what he thought about it. He said, look, he's like, I don't know. I have a hard time having any level of excitement about it because to me, I don't see how it's any different than the Antonio Callaway or Tack McKinley type of signing we've seen recently.
Yeah.
Do you think is that the category you'd put it in, is Callaway and McKinley just hey, let's see what they can do?
Or we could make it T.Y. Hilton if you want. You know,
I mean, if you got what T.Y. Hilton gave you, which was a couple of big catches, you'll take that.
Yeah, there you go. Remember T.Y. Hilton once they kind of got him going, and T.Y. Hilton had, was not as far as removed from playing in the game, but the Cowboys have had some signings that have kind of scratched your head, and you're wondering, but they figured it out. They figured out, well, the guy can no longer play, and they move on. But they've also, I mentioned a T.Y. Hilton. Well, they were able to get T.Y. Hilton, convince him. He comes in. I remember 3rd and 30, and they throw the ball down the left sideline, and he catches against the Eagles for a huge play. There were a couple different. He drew a pass interference penalty on one play at one time. That's the hope right there. You're not giving up a roster spot to take a look at this guy. That's where we're at right now. Is that if in 2-3 weeks he looks like, wow, well, this guy is worth elevating. And maybe it is. Maybe maybe there's somebody else you do. Maybe the situation with somebody gets hurt, or they want to go with a bigger body in there. There's nothing wrong with what they're trying to do right now. What we're screaming is that you didn't do anything at the trade deadline, and we've done our share. We've done our share of screaming for that.
Yeah, exactly. We've weighed in on that plenty. Before we move on to some of the questions about the offensive line heading into this game, and some interesting things they had to say about Tyron Smith that Mike McCarthy had said yesterday. The Martavis Bryant thing, would it be reading too much into this, or trying to connect dots that aren't there? And I'll ask Mike McCarthy about this tomorrow on 105 through the Fan when we get a chance to talk to him. Do you think it's fair to say, hey, you've got a 31-year-old player who's been out of the league for 4 years, recently reinstated, given another chance here? Do you think there's anything they can learn from the reacclimation process that they went through with Aldon Smith, who was in the exact same situation, and just say, hey, we can learn from what it was like to try and get this guy back into an NFL schedule and an NFL process and apply some of that to Martavis Bryant? Or do you think it's just apples and oranges?
I think it's kind of apples and oranges right now to myself, because what happened to Aldon Smith, did he revert back to some of the problems that he'd had before? That was what, and we'll see with Bryant, but when Aldon Smith was here, there was some times where he was actually pretty good. There was
early on he had that 3-sack game against Seattle.
There was some times where he was, like the Aldon Smith of old. But yeah, I think it's really, I think it's apples to oranges there, Bob. I really do. I think every one of these players that deal with these issues are different. But how do you support them, and how do they respond to the support that you're giving them? That's how I think that it can be very much, something that we need to focus on. I think the Dallas Cowboys have a great support staff. I really do. I think they do things in order to help them players try to overcome any types of issues that they're dealing with and give them that support. But the player also has to be the one willing to take the support as well to make it all work.
Mike McCarthy out at the Star this week talking to reporters. The question about Tyron Smith, who had a rest day on Wednesday, the question came up about, hey, he had a dominant game against Philadelphia, really turned back the clock, looked like the Tyron Smith of old.
Absolutely.
He leading up to that game did not get practice in other than the Saturday walkthrough. That was the only amount of work that he got leading into this one. And now Mike McCarthy has said, and this was per Clarence Hill's description of it, that Mike McCarthy had said that they are going to consider staggering his practice load similarly the rest of the way. Now, a lot of times I know there are coaches and teams that view it as, hey, a lack of practice also sets you up for potential susceptibility to injuries and things like that. And getting in those reps is important. It's hard to just step in. With Tyron Smith, it may just be a different question because the guy's seen so much football, played so much football, right. And you may just look at it as, hey, let's do anything we can to minimize the number of opportunities for him to get hurt, since we've seen so consistently how he gets hurt. Brian, what do you think about this thought process from the Cowboys that they may say, hey, it's not just Romo Wednesdays, it's potentially Tyron Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, do the walkthrough and then get out there and hope for the best on Sundays?
Yeah, if you can guarantee me that he'll play like he did against Philadelphia every week, I'm all for this. You want to hear me go on a really big rant, Bobby, and I did it earlier today as we taped this on a Thursday on the break. I think practice is important. I do. And I think it's important for a team that struggles with what we talked about, that 911 stuff, where it's an emergency details. Yeah. I think it's, these veteran days and all that. I get it. Having a healthy team is important. I mean, the Giants guys were amazed talking to them today, how healthy this Dallas Cowboys team is, and just recently had its bye. But overall, McCarthy has done a good job. Yeah, they've lost some guys in practice. Unfortunately, lost a guy in practice with Diggs. That's something I think that's hurting them right now. But to me, I think practice is important. No disrespect to Allen Iverson. I think practice is very important. And I think practice is important when they start to run these rub routes and pick routes and, working together and trying to kind of figure out how to make the running game a little bit better. How to the combo blocks, how are we going to do this? Our steps right? There's just so much that you're leaving to chance when you don't practice. Tyron Smith has made a career really of not practicing and playing games. He's the poster child for that. How many times have we seen, well, he's got to practice tomorrow. Well, he's got to practice the next day. Well, he's got to, and he didn't practice and he'll play, but I just think that, to me, anytime you're giving up practice, you're hurting your football team. And Mike always talks about how much he loves practicing, but he has all these veteran days, and it's the veteran days are guys that are key players, remember Amari Cooper, several seasons ago, probably 2-3 seasons ago, when he wasn't on the field for the Philadelphia game in the final drive of the game.
Yep.
And you kind of got the feeling he goes, was it coach's decision? Was it coach's decision because you didn't practice that week? Could we not put you out there in those situations because you hadn't practiced? Practice is important to me. I was never in college, was never a good enough player in game day. I was a deep snapper, long snapper. I practiced every day at it though. But there's other guys, you practice, you go out there and you work, and when the time comes and the attention to detail you talk about, that's what you do. You're ready for that situation. And I think the Cowboys and some of the things that they've missed out, attention to detail, is probably because they don't practice all the time.
It is an interesting question. Again, it's a different proposition when you're talking about a guy like Tyron Smith, who's seen so much football and knows the game like he does. I'm sure that they feel
he's
like
different.
Hey,
he's the outlier in this because if you guaranteed me that he was going to play, they had a Doga ready on we were talking about Top Gun today, and I made the line. I made the reference to Catapult 2, but it was Ready 5, I think, is where, everybody, when they send the mission off and we have a guy on Ready 5, to send off in case. Adoga was on Ready 5. You know, he was ready to go, and they didn't need him. They didn't need him in the game. But if you can guarantee me that Tyron Smith is going to play like that every single week, I'll go play video games with him the whole time practice is on. I'll do whatever whatever you want me to do. If I'll go to lunch with him, whatever you want me to do, if that's the case. But I don't know if Tyron Smith's to the point now where he could walk up the ramp going to the airplane and he could get hurt.
Honestly, it's just
sleep
it can
the
be
wrong way.
Sat on a plane for 2 hours, back tightened up. That's where he's at in his career.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they play it. Hopefully you get more games like that from Tyron Smith in the future. If
it's him and they do that, I understand. The others, I think there's ways around this without having to sacrifice practice time.
Yeah, we're talking about a very unique injury situation. The only guys you would probably consider this type of thing for would be a Tyron Smith, or back in the day, Sean Lee, where they tried to avoid Lee getting hurt because it's just you were trying to minimize the number of opportunities. Anytime
they bump into people, there's a potential for damage. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, the New York Football Giants come to town, a team that you hammered 40-0 in week 1. And you know what's funny is I remember watching that tape of the game the Cowboys played against the Giants, and I watched the Giants this week, their last couple games, and we'll get to the offense later this week. But Brian, stunningly enough, this is a much worse football team than the one you played in week 1, I think. This is a bad team.
Yeah, they're struggling, especially offensively. The quarterback situation, the offensive line is just not been good at all. I mean, just not good at all. And that's really in it. And I think, Bobby, the offensive struggles have carried over on the defense. I think that there are things defensively. There's players defensively. If you watch Kayvon Thibodeau play against the Jets, you understand why he was selected where he was. The 3-sack game. And then there's other games where you watch him against the Dallas Cowboys in week 1 and he didn't have a pressure nor did he have a sack. To the Cowboys' credit for the way they played that game or for that way they played that day. But I think overall, though, they're banged up. Adoree Jackson, one of their better corners, is dealing with a concussion. He had a neck injury in the Buffalo game. I'm kind of hearing whispers that he's if he could get through today, tomorrow, that he'll likely play. So that would help them at cornerback. Banks, the rookie corner, has had some really good moments. I think the best player, though, on their team is Dexter Lawrence, the defensive tackle. I think
he's fantastic.
I think that's the one guy, and I would not be surprised with the struggles that you've had at center and some of the struggles that you've had at right tackle. There you go. When you start to talk about Thibodeau against Terrence Steele, when you start to talk about Lawrence against Tyler Biadasz, those are a couple of bad matchups for the Cowboys right now. When you look at the overall picture of, okay, who would you be worried about in this game? And I think that, the thing with Lawrence is he's just so good playing the run, but he's so good at rushing the passer. I mean, rushing the passer is taking the center and walking a 310-pound man straight back into the middle of the pocket, into the quarterback. And then when the quarterback pulls the ball down, then he stands there and tackles the guy. That's the kind of player he is. And we've seen Biadasz have trouble with guys on his shoulder, maybe guys attacking his snap hand, that right hand, attack that snap hand so before he gets it up. But Thibodeau, same way. He's very capable he plays both sides of the defense. He's capable of having a game where he could get pressure and get sacks. Showed it against the Jets. Jets bad offensively, totally understand that. But there's some things. How many times are you going to be willing in this game to put both those guys in those one-on-one situations? Will be a repeat of last week's actions.
That's that's definitely, those are matchups that you have to worry about. I'll say this, and I don't want anybody to confuse it and think that we're saying like, these Giants, they could really pressure you. There's the any given Sunday aspect of this. This is a bad football team.
No, it is a bad football team.
Yeah, not that you're not saying otherwise. I'm just clarifying for people who think that, like, if we're trying to say there's anything here. But I want to read a quote to you after the game last Sunday where the Raiders, who were spiraling, fired their head coach, were just in an awful situation, absolutely thumped the Giants in a game on Sunday. After that game, Xavier McKinney, a guy who's played at Alabama and has an understanding.
He's a good player. We haven't even talked about him, but we're about to,
understanding of NFL culture, understanding of locker room optics, understands all those things. He spoke to ESPN after the game, and he said, I think that from a leadership standpoint, I don't think talking about the Giants coaching staff, they've done a great job of letting the leaders lead and listening to the leaders and the captains. That's a toxic situation right off the bat. And we'll look at the offense tomorrow and some of the issues that Daboll and this offense have had. But looking at the defense, Brian, it's not schematically, at least what I see, very different from what we talked about in week 1. It's still very that Wink Martindale, like, hey, try to guess who's coming. We're going to show 7 guys and 5 of them are coming. You got to guess which ones. And, it relies very heavily on that. The first player, though, that I want to identify as we talk about Kayvon Thibodeau can be a problem. Dexter Lawrence can be a problem. I don't know how the Giants, if they're committed to Cordell Flott playing in the slot, I don't know how CeeDee Lamb doesn't go for 200 yards.
Yeah, that's an issue. You're absolutely right about that.
Flott has not been good.
No, and that's a problem for them right now. And that's In week 1, Trey Hawkins started, and Trey Hawkins has only made 2 starts. Trey Hawkins started on the outside, but I was kind of thinking, man, Trey Hawkins has to be better than what Flock has been for the Giants. You talk about a guy that plays a lot of loose coverage. He's when he needs to be up on the guy, he's not. When he needs to be back, he's up. I mean, there seems like a lot of chaos to his game, and I mean chaos in a way that it's causing the Giants coaches. And what's so interesting about the Giants and Wink Martindale is that almost half the time you're going to get a blitz from them. This team play more cover 0 than any other team in the league. And I mean, cover 0, it's no safety help. They're coming after you. So they're blitzing as soon as they get off the bus. The one thing that Dak Prescott has been really good at throughout his career is playing against teams that blitz him. He has figured out that if you're going to pressure me, I'm going to find a way to make plays. And for as much blitzing as Wink Martindale does, boy, he puts his secondary in some harm's way. He really does. And you mentioned Flott at corner, Banks being a rookie. Hawkins.
Banks will be good. He is going through. I think Banks is going to be a good player. But
there's no question.
Going through. Yeah. He takes some rookie lumps. There are moments that look good, but he takes his lumps.
I'll tell you what. The Jason Pinnock, the safety, the other safety they have, number 27, I think is a really good player.
He was a
converted. He was a converted. He was a converted corner from Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, and I'll tell you what. He's the one guy I would love to have him on this team because there's a safety right there that can cover. We talk about corners that play safety that have cover skills. Pinnock is a guy that does that. I could very well see them. How do they treat Jason or Jake Ferguson in this game? How do they treat, could Pinnock be the guy that they say, okay, because if you look at Pinnock, I think 10, 24 targets, 10 receptions. And they have an interception. He's given up a touchdown, but he also has an interception. How are they going to play? How are they going to play Ferguson? You're right. Their struggles are going to be having to deal with Lamb, but maybe with Pinnock they have a guy that can actually play against Ferguson and work from there. But you're right, Bobby. I'm not trying to blow smoke up everybody's butt and say this. But there's players on the defense that can give the Cowboys offense trouble, especially in spots that they've been struggling. Right tackle, center, are a couple of spots I think of right there.
It's funny. So talking just sort of generally, not specifying anybody in general, just talking about them as a unit defensively, Brian. Last week whenever we've heard a lot consistently about they want to establish the run. The Cowboys want to establish the run. They want to do. So we talked last week.
Struggles against the run.
Yeah, where we talked last week and we said Philly that this isn't going to be the game where you're going to be able to establish the run. Sorry, they're not going to let you do it. Giants, you might be able to, even with some of your offensive lines. Yeah, you might be able to, because here were the two things that stood out to me, Brian. Again, as a unit, not necessarily specifying any player, just watching them as a unit. I don't think they move well horizontally. I don't think they cover sideline to sideline very well. They take bad angles. They seem to be. They
miss tackles too.
That's the other thing. They miss tackles, and they don't play with a lot of speed to the sideline. And so if you want to kind of, Dallas has this year with their run game seems like they're trying to kind of widen things out a little bit. Right. If they want to widen things out this week, there might be some trouble for the Giants in stopping that.
Yeah, and like I say, to me, if I'm Wink Martindale, the first thing I'm thinking about is Dallas doesn't run the ball particularly well. And my thought would be trying to do everything to stop Lamb, Ferguson, and Dak. That's my first line. But maybe the Cowboys come out and say, okay, we're going to try and run this ball a little bit and try and maybe work on some things to – if they go into this game and they try and run the ball and don't have success doing it, now you've got even bigger issues. Because you're right. This, but you got to block. You got to block Ferguson. You got to block Lawrence. You got to block. I'll say this though. The linebacker play for these guys.
Okereke is not a bad player.
I don't think he's a terrible player at all. But I'm just saying though. To me, throwing the ball against these guys seems like another better option, especially with what's going on at nickel and what's going on if Adoree Jackson doesn't play at the other corner. That seems like to me that, if you can handle the blitz, you can throw the ball, you can make plays. The Cowboys were able to do it last time, but I could see the Cowboys coming out and trying to establish the run a little bit. But if they don't have success doing it, man, now where you at? Now where you at as far as your thoughts on their running game?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a Cowboys team that has played really well at home over the last few years. Dak Prescott plays really well at home. They are friendly. That turf has been friendly to them. They play fast on it.
Yep,
and they're able to take some more shots down the field, or have been historically over the last few years. And so this feels like, Brian, another opportunity to really establish, like we mentioned, what you want to do with CeeDee Lamb. If you want to talk to him about, like, who do I think we're going to be looking at after the game on Sunday and saying, wow, he had a big day, I think CeeDee Lamb, if they choose to, what's been their approach in recent weeks, it feels like, is let's just get Lamb the ball. Let's listen to it.
I don't think it's a bad plan.
If they're committed to that on Sunday against the Giants, CeeDee Lamb, I think, is going to have a massive day.
He might be player of the week. You're right about that, especially against Flock if they run him out of the slot.
Yeah, because Flott, and look, Flott, I mean, we talk about Flott in coverage, and I don't want to just bully your LSU guy there, Brian. I don't want to just go after an LSU
He's struggling in college. He's struggling in college as well.
He's a thin player. He's a very thin player.
Very thin,
but
very slight. It's
not just been in coverage. He's been really bad in some of the run support. And again, if you want to talk about trying to get the ball out wide, he's going to have trouble there if you run into his side.
Right.
So just something to watch for there. You are listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag. It's where we, as usual, turn things over to our dear sweet listeners for their thoughts, their questions, their comments. First one here from Scott Williams. He says, shades of Atlanta years ago, coaches didn't help that tackle either. Any insight on why they didn't adjust more to help Steele? Was the center that big of a concern? What is the issue there? Brian, would you have lent more help to that side?
We talked about it in the one area that we had some concern about. Well, the two areas, it was center and it was right tackle. And I know for a fact that I know on Love of the Star and I know on our show on 105.3 The Fan that we talked about, and even in the pregame shows and stuff, do you try and make that these Hassan Reddick and those guys have to play a full man outside? Do you put a tight end over there? Do you put a wing over there? Do you bring a wing across and chip? Do you chip with a back? I only saw one time. That I've noticed one time where Pollard was at the left side and worked left to right to help Steele on the outside. But they let Steele play that game one-on-one the whole entire time. And there was a time actually where Rico Dowdle could have helped. God, I got to go back and look at the play. There was a time where Rico Dowdle was checking. He checked his linebacker, and though Graham goes running inside right by Steele, and Dowdle just goes right past him, and you're thinking a guy that had played maybe more snaps, maybe he's a little bit more aware, could have probably helped Steele right there and picked at least given got a body on Graham and not let him have a free run at Dak. Yeah. I don't think it was as bad as that day in Atlanta, but man, going in, you knew that there was probably going to be some help that needed to be administered, and I don't think it was on the level that it needed to be.
Yeah, Steele has definitely struggled. Now, I'll give him credit for this. We've talked about Steele a lot over the year plus that we've done this. There is nobody that works harder. If these are technical flaws, if these are things that can be fixed with work ethic, then Terrence Steele will fix them. It's just a question of right now of how much of it may be health and how much of it is just limitations physically.
We've always known him we've talked about him as a plus like run blocker.
But the last 2 years he's been one of the better run blocking.
One of the better run blockers in the league. There's struggles with the passing game. He just physically gets overmatched at times, and when he gets off balance, sometimes he has the unbelievable ability to recover, and then sometimes he gets beat very quickly when he gets broken down. And that happened to him in the game the other night.
Next question here. There's actually two of these. So Josh and Gru. The first one from Gru. I assume that's a reference to Despicable Me. Gru, can you guys break down what the hell is going on with Pollard? We know Steele has been bad. Is there any way to scheme this offense for him to get better run lanes? And then Josh Peterson asking similarly, offensive line issues aside, is Pollard a tick slower this year? I keep wondering if he's lost a step after the injury. Brian, do you see... A lot of the running game is going to be what's blocked for you, and the offensive line has obviously struggled at times with the run blocking. But what do you think is Pollard's responsibility in the struggles? I know he had talked about during the bye week. He said he thought he was being too predictable for defenders, and that they were able to get a beat on his running lanes and where he was going with the ball. Man, what do you think what part do you think he shares in the struggles?
If he's seeing running lanes, God bless him, because I sure haven't. They haven't been as good at the tight end at the point of attack. They haven't been as good with Martin and Steele on the right side. They've had some breakdowns on the backside. Tyron Smith's been beat a couple of times. Tyler Smith's been beat a couple of times. They haven't got the center up on the linebackers particularly well, or handled down linemen when he's been involved. Yep. If you tell me their lanes there, they had a good run the other day. I believe it was Dowdle had the run that they got through the secondary off the right side, right outside edge, and then they get the holding call. They could have called holding on Ferguson, and they could have called holding on Schoonmaker, both, if you wanted to be honest about that. Is Tony Pollard as quick as he once was? Absolutely not. He's not. He suffered a terrible injury. He came back. He rehabbed. It's taken time. I think he's lost a little bit of his quickness. There used to be a time where Tony Pollard would make somebody miss, and then he would be into the secondary. We always said that why did he average a whole yard better than Zeke? Because when he got to and through the hole, there was that explosiveness.
Do you think that's and obviously I'm asking you to project a little, but do you think that step that he's lost, is that a function of, hey, first year removed from the injury, he's going to be working back or do you think that that injury may have robbed him moving forward?
Look what it did to Prescott. Look what Prescott suffered. I don't think it's the same injury.
No, it's not. But
it's but lower leg injury, ankle, And what's the most important thing for these guys in your ability to run? Ankle flex, the ability to put the foot in the ground and push off that and go. How much ankle flex do you have? I personally just don't think Pollard's as quick as he once was. He had that ability to slash and dart and do. And I haven't seen that, but I haven't seen a whole hell of a lot of blocking up front for him either. They've tried to do things with pulling guys, double teaming guys, and all that. They have just not been very good at it. That's the real issue going forward.
Next question here from Matt. With Tyron's injury concerns, is there any chance you get him ready to play versus New York and Carolina, and then you sit him for the short Thanksgiving week against Washington? It seemed like he benefited greatly from a week off before facing a tough Philly defensive front. So, Brian, would you at all consider, hey, as part of this, attempt to stagger him and keep him fresh, let's not stick him out there on a 4-day, rest, a 3-day rest going into the Thanksgiving game?
Well, he'd have a full week to get ready for Seattle, right? Yeah. I need to see the Commanders.
Yeah, that's Thursday to Thursday, so that would be a full week. So Commanders would be
you know what? If you're giving him time off for practice already, I don't see any reason you need to be worried about not playing him in games. So I would play him. I mean, if I'm gonna manage it, I'm not gonna manage it with games. He's already missed a game, and I've lost one of them.
He's missed 2 games, and I don't think with the financial incentives on it, he would. I don't think he wants. That, I would imagine.
I don't think he wants to miss games when you're taking money out of his pocket. So no, I don't think they would do that. But but personally, I if you want to manage it through not practicing him, that's probably the best way to go.
We had several people ask a version of this question, so I can't attribute it to one in particular, but a lot of people want to know what's going on with Schoonmaker. Have they missed on him? Do you think he's just there's a little bit of a growing process here? What have you seen on tape from him, and what do you think are these issues that are correctable for him?
No, I think the thing with Schoonmaker, and I'm the biggest Schoonmaker apologist because I saw the tape at Michigan, and I thought
I love the player.
I thought it was really good. I think the point of attack blocking, I think he is doing his absolute best. I think that the successes that he had in college, with the way they ran the ball behind him, I think it's there's a big difference between blocking Minnesota and Indiana and Ohio State than there is blocking the Philadelphia Eagles and other teams that he's played so far. I don't think they've missed on him. I think that you saw what he's capable of doing with the catch that he made. Yes, did he not get in? I mean, that's just. I mean, he got tackled really at the goal line, and he got the ball. He tried to get in. Unfortunately, it was short. I'm not throwing dirt on him right now. And if you want to come after me about my view about the guy, I'll sit down and watch tape with anybody who wants to watch Michigan tape with him, because you could see him as a dominant player. I totally get what the coaching staff and the scouts saw in him as a player at Michigan. It's just right now through week 9, it hasn't translated like I thought it would. I thought Michigan's offense held him back as a route runner and as a catcher of the football.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember too. Like, let's just look at recent history for the Cowboys and tight ends. Tight ends still, we've become used to, some quarterbacks can step in and make plays as rookies. Receivers can step in. Tight end has been one of these positions that guys sometimes take a few years. Dalton Schultz took a few years to become the player that he did.
Blocked me on Twitter because I was saying I was throwing dirt on him.
Look at the last 15 years of Cowboys tight ends that have come through this building. Martellus Bennett did not become Martellus Bennett till years later. Scott Chandler, and not a guy they drafted, but a guy who came through this building and didn't become a really solid, stable tight end option until Buffalo later in his career. Jake Ferguson, look at the leap Jake Ferguson's made from last year to this year. So I do think that has it been as good as you want it to be? No. Is he behind where we expected? Probably.
Yeah.
But I also think there's room for understanding that this tight end position is still one of these ones across NFL circles that I think young players have an adjustment period when they make the leap from the NFL or from college to the NFL.
Totally agree.
All right, that does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. We got one more coming your way. We'll have Giants picks in that one. We will take a look at news coming out of the Star, and we will also review the torture that is the New York Giants offense. A quick little preview for you there. I'll give Danny Tommy DeVito credit for this, Brian. He at least is not scared. That guy he's got some Ben DiNucci confidence of I'm gonna throw this thing.
He's gonna throw that thing, and if he doesn't like it, he's gonna run that thing.
He is. He's got some legs. And I'll also say this, when we're done talking about the Giants offensive line, I think you'll feel better about the Cowboys pass protecting, because the Giants may be the worst in the NFL. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. That does it for us. We'll talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.